Well, if Acts 16 felt personal, with a riverbank, a quiet conversation, and an open home, then Acts 17 feels public. It's loud. It's philosophical. We read about crowds and even mobs. In this chapter, Paul keeps traveling through some more cities that are fun to pronounce. Amphipolis, Apollina, Thessalonica, Berea. Don't worry, I won't quiz you later. And eventually he arrives to the city of Athens, easier to say. And this is not just another tiny stop on the map. Athens is an ancient city. It's influential. It's over the top. It's also an intellectual hub. When you hear names like Plato or Aristotle, you should think of Athens. This was a place that was shaped by ideas. A place where fun was defined by debating truth. It's a place, admittedly, full of people who are obsessed with thinking and therefore maybe detached from reality. I love verse 21. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Can't you just picture the onlookers rolling their eyes? And here we have Paul, and he's walking into that world as an outsider. Remember, he was born a Jew. He was a Roman citizen by status. He didn't even follow Jesus during his earthly ministry, but his life has been transformed by the risen Christ. And now he passionately carries this message everywhere he goes. He's obviously a thoughtful leader, but he believes to his core that the gospel is more than just thoughts and ideas. We've had 16 chapters full of transformational moments. And remember, there was no printed New Testament like we know it. There weren't church buildings with microphones or sound systems. There were just conversations among people. The story of Jesus was literally passed on from one person to the next. And if there's one thing we've learned about Paul, it's that he wants more and more people to know about Jesus. And yes, he reasons with people in synagogues like we hear a lot of times throughout his travels, but he also goes into the marketplace. Now, this was the everyday, ordinary space. It's where deals were made. We can imagine it to be pretty noisy. It's where people went for commerce and conversation, maybe mixed in with a fair share of gossip, if we're honest. And eventually, some philosophers, they bring Paul to a meeting of the Areopagus. Now, these were the governing authorities in Athens. We don't really see that he's been in any legal trouble. He hasn't been accused of anything like we saw in the previous chapter. These people, they just have some questions about his teachings. This isn't the quiet riverbank where we met Lydia anymore. This is more like a center stage moment. But here's what's striking. Paul doesn't start by condemning these people. He doesn't mock their beliefs or say, listen, you're wrong. Instead, he starts with an observation. I see clearly that you are very religious people. Paul's been paying attention. He notices these certain things about their religious ways, but he doesn't just cast judgment. He even references an altar they've built to an unknown God. He's noticing things. And instead of attacking that, he uses it as a bridge. He speaks about God who is a creator, God who doesn't live in temples that are made by humans, a God who doesn't need sacrifices, a God who gives life and breath to everything, a God who isn't some far-off notion, but is really close to all of us. And then he does something pretty remarkable. He quotes one of their own poets. For in him we live and move and have being. And some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Essentially, Paul's saying, I see you. I understand your culture. I've listened to your words. Let's start there. The marketplace with these authorities is a big and bold setting. But Paul, the outsider, is acting with humility, with respect. Now, when Paul speaks about the resurrection of Jesus, some people are kind of like, wait a minute, that raises some concerns. In their world, resurrection, that was a stretch. But others were kind of curious. They wanted to hear more. So they joined Paul and his followers. Not everyone responds the same way to the news of Jesus. But here's what's interesting. Paul's posture stays steady. He's engaging and thoughtful and sincere. He genuinely believes that we can find a basic common thread as a starting place. So as you think about yesterday's reading and compare it to today's, we can see the shift that Paul is able to make in his ministry. At the river, Lydia's heart's quietly opened by God. In Athens, minds are publicly challenged. It's a different setting. It's the same gospel. But maybe that's an invitation to us too. The message of Jesus, it doesn't change. The way we engage people, that might change. Sometimes it's a quiet conversation. Other times it's really lively. But both situations start with a posture that's humble. It's a default toward empathy. And it's a commitment of doing all of this through the lens of love that God first showed us.